We tried that. It worked. It worked for a little bit, but it was kind of difficult.
So how you doing? That's right. Seems good.
All right. So let's see. Income and substitution effect is, I guess, one of the two last topics we're going to look at. Why don't you pull out your exercises I gave you last time that we didn't quite make it to anything because we had our talk about some other stuff. So at some point we were mentioning that a price change makes us feel a little richer, right? And because we allowed ourselves to substitute one good for the other. What were we on? Viagra or something, and cars or something with a C. And so our next step is to now break down what we call an income effect and a substitution effect. So that price change kind of makes us feel richer, like we got a bump in our income, but we really didn't. It was a change in the relative price. So a pure relative price change leads to a, oh shoot, I forgot those other sheets. Okay, leads to a pure substitution effect, holding our utility constant. So why don't you guys look at that problem. Let's see, the one I'm thinking of is the one with the little, what I printed off is I made this big. So read through that exercise and let's see what it exactly asked you to do.
Are we doing the one in figure A or?
Yeah. Let me give you a, while I go back down, I'm going to give you something to think about. So if I'm going to do it in two stages here. Let's see, while I run downstairs to get you guys, all I'm doing is getting a little bit bigger version so you guys can play with the graph a little bit better. So we've got our cars and Viagra. And if Viagra, let's see, if what I changed it from cars to something a little more consumer driven. What was it? Doesn't really matter. Cookies, something like that. Cookies and Viagra. That sounds good. All right, so we got cookies and Viagra. If cookies get cheaper, how does the budget line rotate out if it starts? If it starts like this, how does the budget line rotate if cookies get cheaper? To the right, right? So we can buy more cookies. All right. If we started on a indifference curve that looked like this, let's call it U1, where we were optimally consuming this much Viagra and this many cookies, holding our utility constant at that level. And with the decrease in the price of cookies, we moved to this point. I'm going to go a little bit to the right, U2. So let's call it V2 and C1. Not necessarily crossing here at all. So C2, C1, V1. So when you do a price change, we can think about the income effect and substitution effect. The substitution effect is the amount of substitution holding utility constant. So we're going to bring our new budget line back to our old indifference curve. So our new budget line back to our old indifference curve and find the point of tangency. So there's the new price ratio on the old indifference curve. And this tells you the amount you're willing to substitute holding utility constant. And then the income effect is how much income brings you out to the new place from that substitution effect. So we're just decomposing the income effect and substitution effect. I'm going to go run downstairs and we'll work through your problem there. You can do the first part of that problem. I should be back in 30 seconds. Just a bigger picture of what you got to the right.
Really?
Left hand of the bench? Wow. I know, right? Some harsh son. Whoa.
That's just a big picture of the thing to the right.
I'm thinking about this big picture.
Yep. Big picture view.
What? You were the first, by the way, you were the person that said, is that a shortcut? And then it wasn't at first, but I figured I'd go with it. So this is all your fault.
All right, so first step, bring the new budget line to the old indifference curve. Bring the new budget line to the old indifference curve. Show tangency of new budget line to old indifference curve. Yeah, you can do budget constraint. They've been using BC for like this this example. This was BC2, budget constraint 2, budget constraint 1. Or you can do a prime.
Well, for the fake one, like the...
Oh, for the fake one? Sure, yeah. Yeah, little intermediate BC prime. Oh, here, use this. Use this. Use the big picture now. Draw the new, show the tangency of the new budget line to the old indifference curve. Come around and look at your answers. Which one's the new budget constraint? So step one, so what happens to price? What do we get for A? Part A.
It goes.
Write down part A. There's a, what happens? Rotates inward because there's a increase or decrease in price? Increase. So rotates inward. So you got the new budget constraint is the one on the inside. Okay, good. New budget constraint, BC2 to the old indifference curve, U1. It's different than what I did up here. Have your imaginary golf club in your mind.
I've got golf clubs in my room. We should go golfing sometime.
New budget constraint, BC2, where would it be tangent to the old indifference curve? Good, good, good.
Can we go golfing?
You got your point now?
Gone.
So here's your old
That
indifference
golfing
curve.
John.
So you need to be coming over here, right? Okay. Good. Yes. So parallel shift of that. Yep. Draw it a little bit big, loud and proud. That's good.
Okay, so you just move it parallel.
Yep. Parallel. So you're keeping the relative price ratio the same. Okay. It looks like we're all in the same step. So now that you did the mechanics of it, what is it saying economically? I don't know what an income effect is. Let's talk in pure language. Pure language, not substitution effect, not income effect. Tell me about what's going on. We got the new budget constraint touching the old indifference curve. Tell me a story. What's the interpretation of that?
The new budget, like if the price ratio is the same, the old indifference curve, you would then having peaks and highs.
Yes.
Means that.
Right? So it's looking at that trade-off. So at the new price ratio, which is the only thing we changed with the prices, right? At that new relative price structure, had I held my old level of utility constant, this is the consumption bundle I would have chose. Ignoring income, right? Ignoring income. So at that relative price ratio, if I was allowed to hold my old utility level constant, that's simply the optimal bundle at that price ratio. Okay? And remember, the slope of the indifference curve is exactly what we're finding, right? That's that internal trade-off. Like your willingness to trade would be matching the market's price ratio. So it would be an optimal point. So show the tangency of this. So let's put that interpretation down. What that's saying is holding my old utility constant. This is the optimal bundle at the new relative price. Okay, now I want to jump to the next part with the interpretation before we do the mechanics. Think about what went on. Did utility go up or down? At the end of the day, we came to a new equilibrium, a new optimal. Down. Utility went down because we went from U1 to U2, and U2 is inside of U1. So we know utility went down, right? So that amount that you did the fake shift with, the dashed shift, does that represent income in theory, if it's a parallel shift? How does a change in income shift the budget line? Parallel or twisted? Parallel. So we did a parallel shift, right? So now think about what's going on. We're moving from the new lower utility, and we're giving income that's bringing us up to the old utility. Let that sink in a little bit. What does that mean? Tell me the story of what's going on. Increase in price of, what is our vertical axis variable? Cakes. Let's see, but it was actually, I'm sorry, it was the horizontal that changed, right?
Yeah.
Increase in the price of pies, holding cakes constant, helps you or hurts you? Hurts you, that's why the utility went down. Now, what is that amount of income doing for you then, that shift? It was kind of a fake shift at the time, but theoretically, what is that amount of money doing for you?
Getting back to your original utility.
Great. So it's an amount of income that could be given to you to put you in the same utility, the same level that you had before. So it's a way to compensate you. It's like, oh, you got screwed on pies, but guess what? I'm going to give you some income to offset it, right? So imagine that you're being able to be compensated for that negative effect. That's the income effect of the price change. There is a level of income given a preference structure with utility curves, the normal looking utility curves that are based off the 4 axioms of preference. There's always an income that can be transferred to you to compensate for the price change. That's the income effect. The income effect of the price change that we're dissecting. All right, so into step 2. And I don't even know if I want to call this step 2. Let's leave that intuition, because that's actually the last step. So the substitution effect is that movement along the old indifference curve. That movement along the old indifference curve is the substitution effect. So substitution effect. This is the change in consumption. The change in consumption holding old utility constant. So on your graph, what is that amount? On your graph, where does that look like roughly? If you're eyeballing some units or whatever, what is that substitution effect?
14 and 6.
Yeah, 14 and 8. So depending on where your tangency point is, and it'll be a little bit more specific if we were on, giving you a problem. But I wanted you guys to go through the motions at first here. So your substitution effect is the amount you're trading on this old indifference curve. So whatever that number is, that's the substitution effect. So on your graph, have a little bit prettier graph than what I'm going to do here, but you should have had something that looked like this. We know that we moved from, let's see, this was U2, this is U1. The total effect on pies was moving from here to here, our 2 new equilibrium points, right? So this is kind of the total effect, which I think you guys have written on your sheets, don't you? Yeah. So that was the total effect of the price change on pies. Now we've dissected a substitution effect, which is where this tangency point is. So this part is the substitution effect, right here. That 2 units or whatever you've got That is your substitution effect. Your distance from here to here is your income effect. The amount of income that would need to be given to you to leave you just as well off as you were before the price change, which is exactly the intuition that we went back to. On your, and I didn't draw it as well as, or you guys have, I should have changed this a little bit, not that's on the sheet. My indifference curve actually looks something like this. Your total effect on your cake axis was here, which you guys have. The total effect on the change in cakes went from this level to this level. That can be decomposed into a substitution effect and then a little income effect. So you can do this on both axes. So step 3 is the income effect. By the way, this was in your principles textbook, but we did not cover it in principles class, in my principles class. Sam, do you remember covering income effect, substitution effect? I think it's probably something that's maybe skipped quite a bit in principles class, but it is in the old book. So the income effect is the amount of income necessary to leave a person just as well off after a price change. So maybe we could put that in a little bit briefer. So it's an income change sufficient to restore old utility after the price change. No, it's purely in quantity terms. Quantity of cake. That's why I want you to be careful about putting this on the axes that we're talking about quantities of cake, not dollars at this point. Now, we could translate that to dollars, the amount of income necessary to do it.
Saying, like,
oh.
Are you taking the quantity of cake multiplied by its price plus the quantity of pies multiplied by that price?
No. Nope. And one of the things that we're not even measuring what this income is at this stage anyway. We're just dissecting the curves. Chelsea, were you saying something?
So it's just like you said the term on the substitution, like the substitution is the income always equal to total.
Yes, the sum of the two. So our last thing, I guess, as a note, is that the total effect is always equal to the substitution effect plus the income effect. Now, one can be higher than the other, and if it's a price, the first thing I started you off with was a price decrease, right? Remember I rotated out cookies and Viagra, which means would we be giving income or taking it away? taking it away. So it moves the other direction too. So hang on these words. You might even want to make a special note. When I say an income change, I didn't say an income increase. An income change sufficient to restore the old utility. If you got made happier because prices went down, we're going to be taking money away from you to bring you back to your old level of utility. So really hang on the mechanics, memorize the mechanics of show the tangency line, always take the new price ratio back to the old level of utility, and then you start dissecting. Okay, other questions on that? Now, on the flip side, I gave you 2 sheets last time, right? We're not going to do that one yet. Didn't I give you... Oh, you know what? I was just going to go over it in class. That's what it was. I want to think about this one. Just kind of walk it through. You don't even write this down. I just want you to think about the answers. So Annika spends all of her income on golf and pancakes. Green fees at a local golf course are $10 per round. Pancake mix is $2. When Annika's income's $100, she buys 5 boxes of pancake mix and 9 rounds of golf. When Annika's income rises to $120, she buys 10 boxes of pancake mix and 10 rounds of golf. Based on these figures, determine whether each of the following statements is true or false, and briefly explain. Golf is a normal good and pancake mix is an inferior good. True or false? False. Why do you say that?
Consumption levels are going down.
Okay. And what's going on that would make you conclude that? Explain more of the answer. So consumption level, you're saying, first of all, consumption levels are going up?
Yeah, on both sides. She buys...
Oh, you know what? I might have to try this. Oh, shoot, I can't do... Oh, that's right. You got to pull up this thing. Maybe I should try this.
Go for it. Whatever it is.
I just learned a new little tool. If it'll take too long, though.
Are you going to write on that?
Yeah. Well, you have to open up this other piece of software to get that to go. And I'm not sure if I'll be able to totally pull this off. This is, if I'm ever going to use it, this is the type of situation where I might. I'm not doing so good here. Oop, getting closer. So now maybe I have to switch back to the left one. Now it's super tiny.
We can have that box.
Yeah, where? Here we go.
No.
Yeah, this will work.
Pull back to with the box up in the right hand corner.
And just blow it up. Alright, that's a little better, a little sketchy. Not quite as quick as. Okay, well, if I would have had it set up ahead of time, that might not have been too bad. Alright, now let's see if this thing works. Touch, some sort of drawing thing. Oops, I'll need the squiggly. Alright, let's see here. So, what'd you say, Michael? Now that we went through this big process, we better make this thing work.
You can't necessarily consider pancake as an inferior good, especially just because...
Okay, I don't like this. Okay. Why?
Because she's buying more of pancake mix than she is golf when it goes up.
So, pancake mix, what about golf?
Well, I mean, golf is $10. So, I mean, as far as how much money she spends on that extra 20, she equally distributes it.
Okay.
So, how would it be?
Anybody else?
With income going up, she bought
That's the cleaner way to think. I mean, the only thing that changed was income, right? So income went up from 100 to 120, and the price ratio stayed the same, so there was no changes there. At 100, she bought 5 and whatever that number that I can't read anymore is, and 10 and 10. So both went up in response to an income change. So both these goods are considered a normal good. Okay. Golf is a luxury good. Anybody do the reading? We didn't talk about this yet. Luxury good. You don't have to. I'm just curious if anybody remembers what a luxury good is. You would have had this in principles class too. I didn't. I kind of skip it in principles class as well. It's an extra category of a normal good, and it has to deal with the income elasticity. If the income elasticity is greater than 1, then the good is said to be a luxury good. So under the category of normal good, we've got a regular normal good, but then we've got this kind of special category. A luxury good is if the income elasticity is greater than 1. And you can think about the implication of that. If we say an income elasticity for golf is 2, then an increase, a 1% increase in income leads to a 2% increase in golf. Right? So you're being really responsive to an income change. So you can't do it when you're poor, but when you're rich, you're going to really start taking it on. An income elasticity equal to 0.75, a 1% increase in income leads to a 0.75% increase in, let's say, pancakes. Pancakes are a normal good, but they're not a luxury good. Okay, so they're still normal, but they're not a luxury good. Now, what do we know about ramen noodles? Inferior good. So the income elasticity is negative, less than 0. And so then a 1% increase in income leads to a negative 1% or negative 2%, you know, whatever the change is, whatever that elasticity is, then the inferior good is there. Now, if you've got an inferior good, what is likely the income effect of that price change? Yeah. So as we start to look at your graph there, that is how we can start to see normal and inferior goods as well off of the total effect. The income effect could cause you to decrease consumption instead of increasing it in total. And so we'll map that back later. I'm going to show you a couple more pictures. Pancakes. In order to calculate this problem, by the way, you have to go through and calculate some elasticity. So we have the optimal bundles. You can go through and do a little, you got the income percent change went up from, so we got all the details we need for income elasticity, which, remember our lesson, hopefully you guys learned from your exam for the rest of the semester. What's this formula in percentage terms?
Quantity.
Percentage change in quantity over the
percentage change in price.
Percentage change in price for price elasticity, but for income elasticity? Income. Okay? So again, we might see a problem where you might have income go up by 10% or 12%, and here's the quantity changes. So always know this, and then hopefully that'll help you convert it to the other formula where you can look at the slope of it and break it down from there. Okay, so I want to bring you through a couple pictures to wrap up this chapter. So we're going to go back to the lectern. Okay. Now, you slow me down as we go through this. If you see something that doesn't quite, I'm intentionally heading to one particular place, but this might be valuable too. to look at where these are heading. So income change, income rises, some new point occurs.
So I have a question.
Yes.
Would this be an example of mac and cheese being an inferior good?
You got it, right? Why?
Because quantity goes down.
Good. Right? So mac and cheese is falling. We had an increase in income. Mac and cheese falls. Quantity of steak goes up. Steak's a normal good. We can't tell if it's, by the way, a luxury good or a normal good until we get into the elasticity business. That's kind of a special case. But we can tell normal good and inferior good, and that's what this one's showing. Good. This is that income expansion path, just mapping out what's happening over time. We're in quantity space, so we call it the income expansion path. Its kissing cousin is the angle curve, which I talked about last time. We're measuring now income over the quantity of bus rides, and that path could change over time. Here's one. This was something from your book here on household size and the square feet, on what that trend looks like as income rises. So household income, size of the house. This is a combination of some time series data along with house size. And you can kind of map up, so you kind of got three variables being mapped at one time. There's the angle curve. Makes sense. As we become more and more rich, then the actual size isn't as important. Maybe things like marble and gold faucets and stuff, but the actual sheer size, once you get up to 6,000 square feet, do you really need another 1,000 square feet, right? So you start maybe, that is maybe the story going on there. Although we see this inflection point, which is kind of interesting, right? So we kind of go up. Okay, we're going to do an exercise on this. This is something we did with deriving the market demand curve. Price changes for grape juice. Nothing happens with Mountain Dew. We start to re-optimize our optimal bundle, and we can map that out down in price quantity space, and that's our good old demand curve. So that's the derivation of demand from this utility business. How we derive the market demand curve.
That's a single person.
This one, yep, as a single person. And then our exercise is going to get into two people getting the market demand from these individual derivations. Okay. Now, with this one, it's showing a shift. So if there's some news that comes out that says grape juice has been found to cause blindness, okay? What happens in this graph? We know this graph, don't we? I hope, from principles class. Grape juice caused blindness. What happens to demand? It goes down, right? Shifts down, so we go from D1 to D2. What's going on up here when this new news comes to the market about grape juice and blindness? Okay. We're going to hold that constant. So at each price, we're going to look at the optimal bundle consumed. What's happening? Talk to me about the secrets in the indifference curve. And it's a little bit slippery, but what happened to the indifference curve when you learned about grape juice causing blindness? Your marginal rate of substitution changed, right? Which means, what happened to the indifference curve conceptually? Like, if we looked at a before and after picture, what do you think went on?
Start going away.
Do you think it inverts?
What's that, Cadence? go like this, right? It's morphing. The slope, the texture of your indifference map is kind of morphing a little bit. And so if before we were willing to have a certain amount at this rate, now we're all of a sudden willing to give up a lot of grape juice to get one little Mountain Dew. Because we hate grape. We don't like grape juice. I don't want to be blind, right? So imagine the slope of a single indifference curve kind of curvature changing, right? And so now, if you rethink about the problem, if these were the old indifference curves and the slope all of a sudden became steeper, look at what I'm doing. I'm creeping up dew and I'm giving up grape juice, right? So as I'm curving and sloping and changing, so those indifference curves morph as we get more information from the market. The only thing here in this space is the quantity of grape juice, the quantity of Mountain Dew, the prices of each good, and the amount of income you have. So if nothing else changes other than the news, these don't shift, right? The budget lines don't shift. You can afford the same amount of grape juice and Mountain Dew you could before the news came out. Now, market conditions may change the actual market price of the good, but that's not really what we're investigating here, right? Isn't this theoretically an infinite number of prices on grape juice, right? It's the whole price map. So that's not really the question we're addressing. That's how much are you buying at each one. But as we start to morph our indifferences and the slopes become more flat, we're going to trade it off. Now, that's what this graph's showing on the, I can't remember if the next, then we go to this. I think maybe your text, these extra points are off the old one, and it's showing that at this old utility curve we're bumping, or we're actually going back at this price. So at $2, I used to want to buy this amount, now I'm buying this amount. Not because the price changed, in fact the price stayed the same, but because my indifference map morphed. And that's the shift. It's kind of just a conceptual thing to play around with. At the end of the day, you're going to be using a formula, and your utility function is some continuous function of grape juice and Mountain Dew. And so the utility function tells the story of Mountain Dew raised to the 0.6 power and grape juice to the 0.4 power. And so that structural form might take on a different shape, different parameters, and so then you'll get a different result as you crank out the math. But at least conceptually, I like to tie things back to these graphs. Okay. So here we go. Total effect, A to B, if both goods are, is that normal or inferior? Be careful. I'm saying be careful because both went up, but did I have an increase in income? No, it was a price change. So I'm just saying be careful. We don't necessarily know that. Now to tell whether they're normal or inferior, which one do we pull back to which? The new one back to the old one. So I'm going to take the new indifference curve, or the new budget constraint, come back to the old one. There's the substitution effect. So if this is the substitution effect, we've got the total effect bigger, so there's a positive income effect. And then what's going on up here? The total effect here for rounds of golf. So if this ends up being the substitution effect, go from here to here. Substitution effect is negative, right? Coming down, income effect brings us back up. So still a normal, going from here to here is the income effect for that good as well. So both of them are normal. And there's your picture of it. Income effect, substitution effect. All these are just examples straight out of your book, so you guys can go back and review them later, but I think it's helpful to have a flyby. Let's see. Same one. Oh, restaurant meals. Let's see. So we had a decrease, increase in restaurant meals.
This is the same stuff again.
Same stuff. Decrease restaurant meals. Oh, okay. This is just breaking it apart. That was just 3 of those little mini 3s. That was the same one to have a little more close-up action. Couple conceptual things again. Curvier, as Caden said, this curvier indifference curves, smaller substitution effect. Flatter indifference curves, larger substitution effect. So if you're ever asked to draw these generically, sometimes it's nice to leave them flatter because then it's big movements. But as we make this curvier, you can see then that tangency line would be a little bit further in and it would be a smaller amount. A lot of this stuff I wish I had down in graduate school, like having this book before I went into graduate school would have been good. So this is a backward bending supply curve. This is one where we see an income effect at different levels taking over. So the thought here is if I'm a doctor or attorney and I'm making $200 an hour, I don't necessarily want to work more when I start to make $250 an hour. I might want to take some time off and have some leisure. So in labor economics, we've seen this kind of upward sloping for most income levels. The higher you pay, the more you cover their opportunity cost of less time with the kids or other things that they could be doing with their life. And so that'll induce people into the labor force. You start getting them up to a high enough pay and all of a sudden they want to do some leisure time. And they start backing off on the number of hours of work. So just something that we observe in the labor market. Okay, steak, ramen noodles. So you can see where this one's going. So total effect of ramen noodles was you're still buying a little more ramen noodles when they became cheaper. But as we draw this thing back to the old indifference curve, depending on where that tangency is, we might have had something a little different with the income effect. So I think this one does the same big picture. Substitution effect. Substitution effect is law of demand. Think about that for a sec. Price goes down, I buy more. We're not disobeying the law of demand. There's one special category of Giffen good that we can look at that's basically not realistic for most of everything. Giffen good is decrease in price would actually lead you to buy less, and increase in price would give you buy more. So it basically goes against the law of demand. Very, very limited situations of people theorizing that might happen. So basically get it out of your mind. But that's called a Giffen good. They had the potato famine. Your book talks about it a bit. But right here, so price of ramen goes down, I buy more. That's the substitution effect. But now check this out. A prime to B. The income effect is going a little bit negative. That's your inferior good effect coming in, is that the income effect is bringing you back down. Okay. Let's see what else we got. Meat and potatoes. This is the Giffen good. So look at the total effect. I started at point A, price went down, quantity went down. So it doesn't make sense. Like, it's a very unique, weird, academic mental masturbation, thinking about every possible theoretical point. That's one of these things. That's what a Giffen good is. But the point here is that we can support that theoretically. It's not disobeying some of the axioms potentially. In the right circumstances, we still are obeying the 4 axioms of preferences, and we're able to show that, hey, a Giffen good theoretically could be there. And that's part of what's being shown here. But empirically, what we see in the real world doesn't happen. Okay, that is, I guess we got one little thing in chapter 5 to wrap up on the market demand, which is nothing you guys can't handle. So, in fact, we've kind of done it before. So I'll let you do that on your own, and we'll talk about it on Wednesday, but I want your Chapter 5 homework Wednesday. So Chapter 5, let's just make it Wednesday. I think I said maybe Tuesday before, but we'll make it Wednesday. And then we'll talk about it at class if you guys have some issues.